Have you ever wondered if it's safe for you to drink the water in your freshwater tank, or what you should do when you get to a campground and the water pressure is really, really high? Well, guess what? We are going to answer questions like that today on Ask Air Gear. We're calling this the water episode.
Hi, I'm Rich Lure.
And I'm Cheryl Toth. We're co-owners of Air Gear, and we answer real questions from real Airstreamers that we see online or that we get from customers. And so we've got a dozen of them for you today, all about water. And before we get started, please, if you haven't yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, do that and like this episode so we can bring you more good stuff. Right,
Okay,
Rich?
great.
So I'm just going to get right in. We've got some questions about the water pump and the pressure. And I found this one on social media. And someone asked, can anyone answer what I hope is a simple, dumb question? Do we leave the water pump on continuously when hooked to city water? What do you think, Rich Stewart?
Well, you certainly can. It doesn't do any harm. So what's happening here is the water will come through from the city water first.
Yeah.
And the water pump will never run if there's enough water pressure coming from the campground.
Okay.
But if the water pressure is really, really low in the campground, the water pump will run a little bit just to boost the pressure, which means you'll be using water from both the campground and from your water tank. So the short answer to his question is it doesn't hurt to have the water pump on. And as I said, if the water pressure is high in the campground, nothing's going to happen. That water pump's never going to run. But the neat thing about this, the way it's designed in an Airstream, is that you can use water in your tank through the pump to boost the pressure from the campground. So if you have really crappy water pressure and the shower's just kind of dribbling out,
It's okay to flip.
it's okay to
Flip
flip
on
the
the
water
pump?
pump on and use your tank to boost it. Now, eventually you're going to run out of water in your tank. So this strategy, you'll have to refill the tank once in a while.
Right.
But it does work great.
Okay. And you also mentioned the issue of high pressure. I want to clarify because you used the word high. And what you meant to say was there was sufficient pressure, so you didn't need to use the water pump.
That's right.
But what happens, question number 2, when the water pressure is high? Because we had somebody write, somebody that I saw online. No, this was a customer actually. Before I had an Airstream, I had a Jayco, and from time to time, a campground would have water pressures above 85 psi. So I had to use a pressure regulator. But if do I have to have one now that I own an Airstream? Is what he was asking.
Okay.
And
The answer is simply no, you don't. All Airstreams made since, way back, decades back, 70s at least, have had built-in water pressure regulators. So
it's inside the water inlet?
It's built into the Airstream somewhere. On all modern Airstreams, it's right in that water inlet, that chrome shear flow water inlet that you screw your hose onto. That's got a water pressure regulator built into it, and it's preset usually for about 55 psi, although that does vary according to the model of Airstream you have. So what that means is you don't need another pressure regulator for your Airstream.
What about, we were talking about pump questions. Is it okay to leave on the water pump while you're towing?
No, it's not a good idea. It won't necessarily do any harm, but think about it. You're going down the road. What if a faucet sort of jiggles into the open position while you're traveling?
Oh, man.
The pump? Now the water pump is on, water's going to start to flow. It's going to be a problem. Something bad is going to happen.
Right.
So it's always good practice just turn off the water pump.
As part of your departure
part of your
checklist,
departure
right?
check.
So yes, it's okay to keep the water pump on when your pressure is low in the campground and you don't want to have a trickly shower.
Right.
But no, don't keep it on when you're towing.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay.
All right.
Let's do our favorite thing, which is Mythbusters.
Mythbusters.
I feel like we should have music for that. Da, da, da. We have 3 Mythbusters about water that we see and are asked about a lot. So the first one is, Rich Lure, I was told I can't drink the tank water.
Yeah. Well, if you haven't,
I read that somewhere.
If you haven't sanitized your water system, that's really good advice because sanitizing the water system, and I just wrote about this just last week, it's one of those most neglected tasks.
Oh,
You've
yes.
got to sanitize the water system because even if you're not drinking from it, you're still using it for cooking maybe. You're showering in it, which means you're aerosolizing that water and breathing in whatever particles are in it and bacteria. You're using it for brushing your teeth. You're maybe giving it to the dog. Who knows what you're doing with that water? But just because you're not drinking it doesn't mean you shouldn't sanitize. So the answer is it's safe to drink the water if you sanitize the water system on a regular basis.
Which, define that. What's regular? Like, how often am I supposed to do this?
I would say at least once a year. And I really think that's kind of shorting it a little bit. Honestly, I think once every season or if you have a long camping season, like maybe you camp in summer and fall, maybe do it twice a year.
Okay.
I would always do it after taking the Airstream out of storage in the spring. Part
So
of my de-winterizing.
okay. So, but let's give them context. So for us, we don't really have a season because our goal is to take one Airstream trip a month.
Yeah.
So we space it out,
But
12 trips a year, more or less. And you sanitize about 2 or 3 times a year.
Right.
Right? Okay.
Because
So-
we don't winterize here because we're
Yeah.
in southern Arizona. So we're lucky that way. But I do need to sanitize the water system, and because we do
couple-
want that water to be safe.
Yeah, every couple months. And we have, and we'll put it in the notes here, and we have a blog called The Practical Guide to Sanitizing the Water Tank. But it's really 5 steps, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you got to do this, a little bit of math, a mix solution of bleach and water, and you fill up your tank with with all of that. And then you open all the faucets and let it all go through and sit. No, you keep the faucets closed. Let it go into your system and sit for like 4 hours.
Well, it's all explained in the
It's all
blog.
explained in the guide.
try to-
It's hard to do it verbally, but
Yeah.
we've got a step-by-step procedure, and it's not that hard. And you'll let it drain, and then you'll flush it out. I mean, basically, that's it. So
It's
make
not
sure
hard at all. It's one of those things that people, it's mysterious and they think it's difficult. But really what it amounts to is you pour some bleach and water into the system, you let it sit for a few hours, and you get it
drain
out.
it out.
That's pretty much
Yeah,
the
I
procedure.
should have. You had a much more distinct way of saying it than I did.
Anyway, but
That's because you've done it a bunch of times.
it's actually, once you get the hang of it, you got the right tools, a funnel and things like that. It's really very, very easy.
Okay, so we've got that for you. Follow those instructions. Easy enough. Second myth to bust. This is like such campfire lore. You'll get better fuel economy if you travel with empty freshwater tanks.
I do hear this one from time to time from people who have written into me and said, I even tested it. And the second time when I took water out of the tank, I got better fuel economy.
1 gallon per
But-
mile.
Well, it
or
doesn't,
no,
it's not a fair test.
Yeah.
Because he might have been going slightly uphill. It might have been the wind might have changed. He might have been driving slightly fast. You can't tell. That's not a scientific test. The reality is that your fuel economy in your Airstream, when you're towing a trailer or you're driving a motorhome, is determined by the aerodynamics of the vehicle, which means how boxy it is and how fast you're going. If you're going really fast, you're going to get lower fuel economy. That makes all the difference in the world. If you want to save on fuel, slow down
Yes,
a little bit.
go slower.
But taking out 100 or 200 pounds of water from the freshwater tank isn't going to make any appreciable difference at all.
And the other thing I always think about when I am asked this by people is, I feel like Wally Byam would be turning over in his grave. I mean, the whole purpose of having a house on wheels, which was his dream, is to get people to say, hey, stop for lunch at a rest area, use your own bathroom when you go to get gas, and take a nap and wash dishes. And you can't do any of that if you don't have any water. So, that's a definite myth.
Definite myth.
Just
Busted.
okay, for reference, we always leave with full tanks because the other thing is you never know what's going to happen on the road.
Right,
So,
right.
hey, you might get stuck somewhere, and it's really nice to be able to use
Right.
your bathroom
Yeah,
and
you don't
wash
have to
some
worry
dishes
about it.
and all the other things you have to do. So,
Yeah.
all right. Myth number 3 is nobody needs a water softener. I've got an Airstream. I have an RV. I don't need a water softener. That's for home use. What say you?
I say water softeners used to be optional for most people. I mean, it was kind of a personal choice,
luxury
sort of
or choice,
luxury
yeah.
thing. I didn't use a water softener for many, many years. But since 2021, when Airstream switched over to these tankless water heaters, it became more of a problem.
Yeah.
Because these tankless water heaters, you've got a very thin coil of copper that's heating up the water, and hard water will fix on the inside of that and build up sediment, and that will clog the water
We
heater.
got a couple specific questions about that, so
Okay.
don't go into too
Okay.
much detail. But
It's
the
a
point
problem.
is,
It is a problem now with the 2021 and later tankless water heater Airstreams. And so I'm starting to recommend a water softener to anyone who travels in the Southwest, where the water is pretty much universally hard,
Yeah.
and other parts of the country where you'll also have hard water issues.
yeah, and we live that hard water issue outside of our Airstream all the time. In fact, we're about to get a whole house water softener in our house, which we should have done a while ago, but we just didn't get around to it. But the water is becoming so hard over the last year or two out west that it's really important. If you're at a campground, you definitely, if you've got the tankless water heater, you really need to think about that. And we're gonna switch over now to the water heater issue so they can understand why. So I'm going to pick the question that says, my tankless water heater keeps going cold what's going on. I just keep getting these rushes of water, or it keeps shutting itself on and off. So we've gotten a fair number of those questions.
We have.
And you
Now,
did a blog on it. So.
I did a blog on it. But first of all, you need to know that Airstream's using about 5 different kinds of tankless water heaters these days. There's Suburban, Truma, Aldi, Gerard, what's in the range line? I forgot. Timberline, and they're all slightly different. Most of the problems we're hearing from people are from people who have aluminum Airstream trailers, 2021 or later, and they have the Gerard tankless water heater. And the most common problem is that the water cuts out periodically. It's hot, it's cold, it's hot, cold, the thing shuts off. The reason that we've been finding, the most common reason, and there's a lot of possible
Yeah, I
reasons
mean, we're not here to
diagnose
we can't diagnose your Airstream problems on a video like this, but the most
The
common.
most common problem that I'm finding is that people have set the temperature too high on the panel. And this is sort of counterintuitive, but if you set the temperature high, then very little water has to flow through the heater because it's using mostly cold water at the faucet to cool down that super hot water that you're creating. And if the water flows slowly through the heater will drop below its minimum flow rate and it shuts off as a safety measure. So if it gets less than about 0.9 gallons per minute, which is not very fast, the water heater will shut off. And so the problem is they've got the temperature set too high and the heater's not having to run, is you're using too much cold water.
Okay.
So the answer is set the temperature down. Go to the Gerard thermostat and set it down to like about 105 degrees, 104 degrees, something like that. So the impact is when you go to take a shower, you have to put the water on full hot to get the temperature you want. That forces the water heater flow to be really fast.
Oh, which is above 0.9.
Exactly.
Okay, so you're not going to have that.
And so the heater doesn't shut off anymore.
Okay.
For most people, that solves the problem.
Okay.
There are other reasons.
Right. So now we're going to go to the calcification reason.
The second most common problem that we're finding is what we were talking about with the hard water. The minerals build up inside the heat exchanger, which is a little curly copper line inside the Gerard water heater, and that starts to block the flow. When the flow blocks, you have the same problem. Not enough water passing through the heater, and the heater starts to shut off. This takes a couple of years to happen. So if you've got a brand new Airstream, this isn't your problem. But if you've been traveling for a little while and you're starting to notice it's getting more difficult, it's probably because you've got mineral buildup inside the water heater. And we have a solution for that. I describe it in my Airstream, my nearly complete guide to Airstream maintenance.
Okay, the book,
And,
second edition.
Yeah, and I think we blogged a little bit about it, but we didn't put the full procedure out there yet. But basically, the solution is like sanitizing. You run a solution of vinegar and water or
Sulfuric? No, not sulfuric acid. Sorry, melt down the whole thing.
It's the acid that's in fruit juices, and it's in the book.
Yeah, and the name escapes us now.
It's a powdered.
It'll be in a title in the video.
It's a powdered acid. You run a solution of one of those mildly acidic solutions through the water system, and it's just like sanitizing. You let it sit there for a few hours, maybe overnight, and it dissolves the mineral buildup inside the water heater.
And then you get something like this photograph.
Yeah.
Which somebody shared online, and I thought, I'm going to save this for later. But yes, that's what it looks like. All these little particles that you see in that photograph.
That's particles of magnesium and calcium that you're seeing there. They look like pebbles in this particular case, but it'll build up on the insides of your pipes, and it'll, it just creates all kinds of problems. So you want to periodically treat the system to get that calcium out.
Yes, or this ties us back to why a water softener, if you have a newer Airstream 2021 or later, and you've used it for the last couple of years, or you use it regularly, you really should consider a water softener. And we do actually carry, recently now, because of all these issues, we're finding there's a fantastic company called Blue Technology out there. They make both a water filtration system and a water softener specifically for RVs. So they're small, like the water filtration system fits in your compartment, and we sell that in the Air Gear store.
Yes,
so
it's getting great reviews. People really like it. I like it a lot. It's the first water filter system that I've actually wanted to carry around with me, because before they were always so huge and they didn't fit anywhere. You had to stick them in a truck, and big pain in the neck. And this one's so much nicer.
Yeah,
so.
it's really easy to set up and take down. Okay, so let's see. I think those are all of the all of the water heater questions we nailed.
Okay.
So what about water quality and safety, it's interesting because I brought up the water filtration system just now, and that is the first question, which is, do you use a water system when you travel? This is a question we get a lot. And yes, we do. And until recently, we use like an inline
One of those cheap little
charcoal water
blue plastic
filters,
ones.
which is better than nothing. Okay, it's better than nothing. But when you'd been searching for a water filtration system that could travel easily and was small, and now we've switched to this filtration.
Yeah. So the problem with the cheap inline filter, I mean, it does a job for with the charcoal. It improves the taste, and it will filter out like big sediment, like sand. Like when you go to Florida, sometimes you get sand in the water, and it'll take care of that for you. So it's kind of a blunt instrument. It does an okay job, and they're cheap. That's one advantage of them. But people don't replace them often enough. You really should replace it every 2 to 3 months.
Even we didn't do that.
I replaced mine. I think 2 or 3 times a year. Probably.
Yeah.
I was getting like 4 months out of it, which isn't great.
Right.
A real water filtration system is going to have at least 2 canisters and sometimes 3, and those are replaceable filters. And it's going to do what the charcoal filter does. But then it's going to have a second and even a third canister, which is going to filter out finer and finer things in the water till you get down to the bacteria level. Now you're talking about a real water cleaning system, which is going to get rid of nasty things in the water, parasites or bacteria, whatever like that. It doesn't get down to the virus level. That's super duper stuff that isn't really practical for most people, but it really makes the water taste better. And it makes a huge improvement. And we use ours 100% of the time now.
Yeah, we do. And so it filters ours, which is the blue technology. It filters down to 0.2
micron.
And that's much smaller than a lot of other RV filters that are out there on the market. This is a company we discovered, again, RV specific system. And what's interesting too is some of the reviews that we've had from Airstreamers who've used the Berkey filter, which a lot of you know that brand, and it's a really good brand, but you have to have it on your countertop. And do you have to drill through the
You don't have to. There's a portable Berkey that you can just sit on the countertop.
But still, it's taking up room, and we have a 23-foot trailer. We don't have, my kitchen space is very small. So that's another reason I like the filtration system. But okay, so let's see. Now we have great. And by the way, the filtration system makes the water taste so amazing.
Oh, yeah.
There was actually another review I just looked at yesterday who said they were raving about the taste of the water.
Yeah, it really is. It's a game changer. That's why we use it 100% of the time now.
Yeah.
It's just so easy.
We talked about sanitizing already. So that was a quality issue some people ask about. And then the last quality issue is really about the water and the hose. So people have asked us about if they leave their water hose lying in the hot sun in the summer and it gets all heated up, is that water safe to drink? So should I worry about the fact that my hose was lying in the sun? Is that water safe to drink, or do I have to flush it through, and how do I do that? And you've always told me most drinking water hoses are rated for cold water only. And a lot of people don't know that. They're not rated for hot water.
Yeah, I would never drink hot water from the hose. It's a bad idea. You can taste it. If you can taste the vinyl, the plasticky taste in the water, that's coming from your hose. Yeah. You're tasting the chemicals that you're drinking. That's definitely a warning sign.
It's not good.
So at the very least, if you have a regular drinking water safe water hose that's made of vinyl, which 99% of them are, and it gets hot lying in the sun, at least run the faucet for a couple of minutes to flush that water completely through until you don't taste the plastic and the water isn't coming through hot anymore. All right, that's the minimum I would do. Well, again, we get back to our ultimate RV water hose. The blue curly water hose that we sell. It's not made of vinyl. It won't leach chemicals. It's safe.
And it's rated for hot
water. It's actually rated for hot water use. And it's the only one in the market that we know of, which is why we use that hose exclusively.
Well, that's not industrial.
Restaurant supply.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Who's going to buy an industrial hose? Because I was actually looking at that a couple weeks ago, wondering about that as I was preparing for this. Well, but you have to buy the commercial grade hose, and they're huge and heavy, and you're not going to see that. This
is food grade for both hot and cold water, and that's really the key here. So when that one gets hot, I don't worry about having to flush it out. There's really no reason to, and you're not going to get algae buildup on the inside either, because light doesn't go through that hose either. Right. So this is another reason why we call it the ultimate RV water hose.
Yeah, and we use it.
Yeah.
And people like it. Okay, well, the last question is actually a question from me.
Okay.
From our last boondocking trip. The SeeLeveL monitor. So he and I have this game now when we boondock, because we're like really mathematical about how much water we use for each shower, because we're only allotted so much for how many nights that we're going to be going with our 40-gallon tank. We get 6% showers, right?
6%.
We used to
That's
get
the goal.
6%. That's the goal. And we meet it most of the time. However, I've noticed that lately on the SeeLeveL monitor, when I push, the water level, it won't change from before and after the shower, or sometimes it stays 100% or near 100% for the whole first day that we're out, and traveling. So I wanted to know, for people to understand, like, what does that mean, and is it a problem, and how do you make it really measure the water that's in the tank?
Well, it's not really a problem as long as you understand what's happening. First of all, you've got to keep in mind, any tank monitor is never really perfectly accurate. All the manufacturers always say that. It's like, oh, ours is super accurate, it never needs calibration, blah, blah, blah. In the real world, no, they're not really accurate. You should at best regard them as, I guess, rough guidelines of how much water you have. And ours is a perfect example. If I fill up the tank until that thing reads 100%, our tank is not full. I can run the water.
Oh, we realized that when we went to Pasadena and we were boondocking, and we didn't have 100% of our water.
And then we used the water for a few minutes, and next thing we know, it says 86%.
Yeah, that was
Surprise!
Bad. That was a 4-night deal.
So
it was like,
what I've learned with ours is always fill it until the water overflows from the water fill. Then you know it's 100%.
Okay.
It's the only way to be sure.
That's a good tip.
Yeah.
When you're stocking up before a trip, because you're going to fill your water tanks before you go, and especially for boondocking.
Fill it till it overflows.
Okay.
Then what's going to happen is it's going to read 100% for, like you said, the whole first day, maybe even longer, because it takes a little while for all the water that's sort of above the top of the tank level to get used to the system. And for some reason, this thing just seems to be slow to kind of make up its mind about how much water we really have. So the gist of it is that it'll stay 100% for a long time, even though we know it's really not, and then it'll suddenly adjust itself. And it's the same problem with the showers. We'll go into the shower and say, hey, we've got 50% of our water. We take a shower, we come back, we still have 50% of our water. That's not right. And then I go take the next shower right after her. She says, I took a 0% shower. And I take a shower, and next thing I know, it drops 14 percentage points. And I'm like, I didn't use that much water. It seems to have kind of a lag, and sometimes it just takes a little while to figure out the accurate level. All this means is don't trust it entirely. It's a guideline. It's really better to have a sense of how much water you use for things, just be conservative in the shower. Be conservative with the dishes. That's the thing.
Which we've done. We've practiced. And I mean, mostly it's me practicing because I got to wash my hair and take more showers. But
you can still do your hair.
I figured out a way to 6% shower. If anybody wants to put a comment or whatever in the YouTube, because I don't want to go through that, because not everybody cares about washing their hair on the road. But I have a system now, and it works.
Okay.
So, and it's not dry shampoo. Tried that. That didn't work.
Okay.
So those are all of our questions.
Oh, we got that.
I want to just remind everyone that we love getting questions and answering questions. So if you have one, send it to ask@airgear.store. That's ask@airgear.store. And we'll try to put it in another episode. And remember, if you're not a subscriber to our channel, please click the subscribe button. And I hope that you like this video. And what else do you have to say about water, Rich Lure? Anything?
It's a good thing.
It's a good thing. So we'll end on that note. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the road.